Hey, folks, Eric Stacklebeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream. We've got the question before us once again. Will he or won't he? We asked this question back in June in the run-up to Operation Midnight Hammer when President Trump ordered strikes, as he called them, those beautiful B-2 bombers that took out Iran's nuclear sites in the weeks running up to it. And during the 12-day war that preceded it, when Israel was smashing the Iranian regime, we said, will he or won't he? There's a lot of rumblings that President Trump's going to get involved and put the dagger in Iran's nuclear program. Guess what? He did. He did it, and now we're asking the same question. Will he put the dagger potentially in Iran's wicked regime? Folks, that is the scenario laying before us right now. President Trump today, here's the latest. Here's what he posted on social media, and I quote, "Iranian patriots, keep protesting. Take over your institutions. Save the names of the killers and abusers. They will pay a big price." He wrote this on his Truth Social platform. He continued by saying, "I have canceled all meetings with Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. Help is on its way," Trump wrote. You can't go back from that, right? When we ask, will he or won't he? He's promising help is on its way. If he does nothing, then he's not a man of his word. And Trump has shown, if anything, in both terms, he's very much a man of his word. He's made promises and he's followed through again and again and again. I think this time will be no different. By the way, those massacres he mentioned in that post, folks, we're hearing various accounts right now, and it is disgusting, infuriating, heartbreaking what's happening to the Iranian people right now. Not surprising. We know the nature of this demonic regime, but various accounts. We're hearing 2,000 people killed, 3,000. One account said 12,000 killed. Another said 14,000. Can you imagine that many people murdered in the streets? And especially the campaign, the crackdown, the brutal crackdown by the Iranian regime intensified on Friday, because that's when the protests really picked up on Friday, January 9th. That's number one. And number two, Ayatollah Khamenei gave a sermon at Friday prayers saying, we're not going to give these demonstrators an inch. We're going to crack down on them, preserve our regime. So you have the regime just indiscriminately just shooting at people on the streets. That's the reports we're hearing from Iran. And it's kind of tough to get those reports. Why? Because there's a complete internet blackout in Iran right now. The mullahs, the ayatollahs, pulled the plug on the web in that country because it's a tyrannical regime. And they don't want the word getting out of the mass slaughter that they are conducting. Thousands of Iranians dead in the streets. We're hearing reports from Iranian dissidents who were able to get the messages out somehow. And Elon Musk has had Starlink up and running over Iran too, trying to help people get online to share with the world what's happening. We're hearing reports of bodies piled up in the streets. And yet, at the same time, I just read a report before coming on with you out of Iran, up to 1 million people, perhaps more, in the streets still. And not just in Tehran, the capital, in cities and towns across this very vast, large nation of Iran. People are rising up, and it really feels like there's no going back here, folks. But over 1 million people in the streets. And the calls by President Trump have put wind in their sails, have galvanized the protesters. Not only that, Reza Pahlavi, who was the son of the Shah, who was deposed in 1979 in the Iranian Revolution when this evil Islamist regime came to power, 47 years of misery and tyranny for Iran, the region, and the world because of this regime. The Shah, his son, Reza Pahlavi, the crown prince of Iran, he's the rightful heir to the throne if they did return a monarchy to Iran. He lives, I believe, outside of D.C. still, Washington, D.C., and he's making statements. He's going on Fox News, etc., to galvanize the Iranian opposition. He's saying, keep fighting. And Trump said today, seize the government institutions, Iranian people. Keep going. So the Iranian people hear this from Trump and Pahlavi, and it's galvanizing. It's putting wind in their sails. It's inspiring them, encouraging them to keep up the fight against overwhelming odds. Look, they're going against the Iranian regime's Basiji goons who are cracking skulls and killing people in the streets. And the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, the IRGC, is behind all of it, engineering the crackdown. And yet the courageous Iranian people fight on. And you might say, well, what's different about 2026? We saw a pretty big protest in Iran in 1999. 2009, massive, 1 million people in the streets then for the Green Revolution. Then in 2022, major revolution or major protests after the death of Mahsa Amini, that young Iranian girl who was killed by the regime's religious police because she wasn't wearing her Islamic head covering, her hijab, correctly. Massive protest in those 3 instances, and eventually they fizzled out because the regime really cracked down, brutal like we're seeing now. So you say, okay, well, what's different about this time? 2 things. Number one, I just mentioned it. You have an American president who is fully behind the Iranian people. In 99, you had Bill Clinton. 2009, Barack Obama, who was particularly shameful. He was pressed about it. The regime was really on the ropes then, by the way. And he said, well, we don't want to be meddling. We don't want to be seen as meddling. And I quote, it was a Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall moment, and Barack Obama didn't want to meddle. No one was asking for American boots on the ground. All it needed was rhetorical support. Iranian people were with you, like Trump is doing now. Now, Trump is promising even more than that, though. 2022, Biden was in office. It was going nowhere. The Ayatollahs felt no pressure. Obama and Biden wanted a nuclear deal with Iran. They were appeasing Iran. They weren't going to intervene. This is different now. Because of Trump and because Reza Pahlavi has emerged as a potential successor to this regime. Look, for that to play out, a lot of dynamics. He lives here in America. Probably take a while for that to play out. Who knows? But the Iranian people, at least, are saying, hey, anything is better than this demonic regime that has its jackboot on our necks right now. And Pahlavi reportedly met off the record with some White House, Steve Witkoff, the Middle East envoy for President Trump over the weekend. So we shall see. But he's saying all the right things for sure. He's appeared with Hannity a few times on Fox News, and he's tweeting at the Iranian people, I'm with you, keep up the fight. So they've got that. And Trump, folks, don't underestimate what support from the United States can do. I bring you the Cold War. When Reagan gave that speech, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Soviet dissidents in prison heard about it, and it inspired them. It wasn't American boots on the ground. It was just the forceful and morally righteous and courageous support from the leader of the free world, the U.S. president, that inspired them to keep up the fight. And that's what you're seeing right now. The Iranian people, look, it's been, I think, 16 days now. And the crackdown's intensifying, as I said. Maybe during past waves of protests, the Iranian people might have packed it in by now and said, you know what? They're slaughtering us. We're not armed. It was sticks and stones against the guns of the regime. But Trump promising help is on its way. Literally, that's what he said. Pahlavi promising help is on its way is inspiring them. That's the big difference from previous protests, and why I think the outcome here, God willing, could potentially be different. We could see the end of this regime now more than ever. The second reason for that is this regime has never been weaker. We've outlined it here on the live stream. Look, the nuclear program destroyed back in June, 50% of its ballistic missiles and launchers destroyed by Israel back in June, exposed as a paper tiger militarily. For all their bluster, the Iranian regime exposed during that 12-day war, complete paper tiger. Their proxy network, Hezbollah, Hamas, etc., the Houthis, has been smashed by Israel. These are massive blows. Assad is gone from Syria. Their economy, a shambles. Inflation through the roof. That's one reason people are saying, we're done with this. And they're in the streets. Lastly, they've had a major water crisis, a drought. It's a perfect storm right now. The Ayatollahs have their backs against the wall. If we want the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism to finally be shown the door for good and end up in the ash heap of history where it belongs, then I believe it is going to take U.S. intervention. What does that look like? Is it going to happen? Will he or won't he? We're going to break it down here real quick. Before I do, a quick reminder, if you like what you're hearing, current events, breaking news, mostly from Israel and the Middle East, but we go around the horn, Venezuela, Europe, Russia, China, the U.S., wherever news is happening, we are going to bring it to you from an unapologetically biblical perspective. If you like that, you like what you're hearing, we don't mince words here. Be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. And we love you here with us every day as watchmen and women on the wall, shoulder to shoulder for such a time as this. And we've been shoulder to shoulder for a long time with our partner for today's live stream, our good friends at Magen David Adom. This is Israel's emergency services system. It's an incredible organization. Paramedics, EMTs, first responders, largely volunteer. 90% of the team at Magen David Adom, they're volunteers. They're doing this for free. And what are they doing? In a time of a 7-front war, instigated and prolonged by the Iranian regime, which we're talking about right now. 7 fronts. Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, the militias in Iraq, Syria, Iran itself, Gaza, the West Bank. Iran on every front is attacking Israel, where its proxies are. Magen David Adom has stepped up in those 2 years plus since the October 7th attacks more than ever. They collect, distribute Israel's entire blood supply for civilians and for the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces. They dispatch every ambulance in Israel. Every time there's a terror attack, God forbid, a missile attack, October 7th itself, the 12-day war, the list goes on. Magen David Adom first responders are first on the ground, quite literally doing God's work. To support their important work, visit SaveLivesIsrael.com. SaveLivesIsrael.com. Look, they're paying a heavy price. Over 30 Magen David Adom volunteers have been killed in the line of duty since October 7th. They've lost over 17 ambulances, and they just keep coming, and they're doing it for free. Again, this is a largely volunteer force. Amazing. You want to fulfill that biblical mandate to support Israel, bless Israel? This is the way to do it, folks. SaveLivesIsrael.com. Support the very important work of Magen David Adom as we start this new year. And look, Israel, again, God forbid, there may be some blowback here. The Ayatollahs, I reported this on the live stream 2 days ago, the Ayatollahs are saying that if the U.S. attacks us, we're going to attack Israel. It's kind of the Saddam Hussein go out in a blaze of glory strategy. He did this in 91, in 90, I should say, in the run up to early 91 and Operation Desert Storm. He fired dozens of Scud missiles at Tel Aviv, did Saddam Hussein, the Iraqi dictator. Now, Iran is saying, we're not only going to strike U.S. assets in Syria, Iraq, the Persian Gulf, we're going to hit Israel. I mentioned earlier, Israel has eliminated 50% of Iran's ballistic missile stockpiles. They still have 50% left. They've got thousands of missiles still. It's a major, major threat. But what are the options for the, and look, Trump knows this and Israel knows this, and Trump and Bibi met at Mar-a-Lago 2 weeks ago. They're weighing all of this. They get it. And with the U.S. air defense in the region and Israel's incredible air defenses, Iron Dome, David Sling, the Arrow missile defense system, and now Iron Beam, the laser-based missile defense system. And then you have Jordan, Saudi Arabia, others in the region, their missile defenses, they could get involved and block those Iranian projectiles incoming. I think the U.S. and Israel are weighing the cost, and they are rightly deducing that it's worth it, because you can take out the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism, which is slaughtering its own people. We know that. They're the main victims, the Iranian people, but which has caused for 47 years such misery in the Middle East and around the world, in Lebanon, in Gaza, in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, in Iraq, in Syria, in Yemen, wherever the Iranian regime has its claws, misery follows. Think of the places I just named. They're some of the most miserable places on earth, chaotic, violent places on earth. What's the common thread, the common theme running through each? Iran is the overlord in those countries, or at least was. Misery there. Speaking from an American perspective, they have loads of American blood on their hands. The Beirut barracks bombing, the Marine barracks bombed in 1983 by a Hezbollah jihadi that was funded and engineered by Hezbollah's masters in Iran, the same Ayatollahs who are in power today. And that's the tip of the iceberg. Look, Iran killed hundreds, if not thousands, of U.S. soldiers in Iraq between 2003 and 2012 with those IEDs, improvised explosive devices that they supplied to their Shia militias in Iraq. They've plotted to assassinate President Trump, 2 separate plots in the run-up to the 2024 election. The list goes on and on and on. They refer to America as the Great Satan. Death to America. They've practically copyrighted that phrase since 1979. So that's one thing. Then developing nuclear weapons that threaten the world, not just Israel, and intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, that are designed to travel across continents, across oceans. Those ICBMs aren't for Israel. They're not even for Europe. They're for America, the Great Satan. And if the Ayatollahs had their way, they would mount those ICBMs with a nuclear warhead. This is a regime that needs to go. And they're aligned with North Korea, China, Russia, the world's worst actors. It's a regime that needs to go. It would be a massive, severe blow to jihad and radical Islam at a time where Islam is rising in the West. The shock waves that would come out of this would be equivalent to the fall of the Berlin Wall in the Middle East. That's how big this would be if this regime would fall. So yeah, when I ask will he or won't he, I think President Trump very much, as a leader of the free world, as a beacon of moral clarity, as a Churchillian type figure in the modern day, in my view, in a sea of Chamberlains in the West. Just a side note on that. Have you seen that Albanese in Australia, Carney in Canada, and Starmer in the UK, the 3 of them are teaming up and they want to ban X, formerly known as Twitter, in their countries? I mean, what an absolute disgrace on so many levels. These weak, woke, leftist, globalist leaders, so-called, in the Western world, Canada, Australia, and Starmer in the UK, they're probably the 3 worst. They're banding together, not to condemn Iran or challenge Iran, but to ban X, where people can speak freely about the Iranian regime, where people can speak freely about the crackdown on free speech in the West, in Canada, Australia, and Great Britain. They want to ban that. They don't like that. Just a side note to show you how things are upside down. It's so bad that the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, is now saying that it doesn't want to send Emiratis to universities in the UK. Why? Because the leadership in the UAE is worried that their citizens, Arab Muslims, will be radicalized in the UK by the Muslim Brotherhood in Britain, in places like London. What a time we live in, where Middle Easterners could potentially be radicalized in Europe by Muslims in Europe. That's how bad the situation is in Europe, and the UK is Exhibit A. That's another topic for another live stream, maybe this week. But in the meantime, I think President Trump, the golden opportunity is there. If this regime is permitted to live another day, the crackdown, this will really, it will become, life has been intolerable in Iran for a long time. But if this regime lives, if this regime outlives these protests, if they violently put them down, crush them, and the United States, after all these comments by President Trump, help is on the way, etc., if the United States stands back and does nothing, that will embolden the Iranian regime. Because the Iranian regime will say, we took the best that our people could throw at us. 1 million in the streets, widespread. They had Pahlavi behind them. They had Trump behind them. We took their best shot, and we're still in power. Not only that, they would say Trump made threats, but at the end of the day, he didn't follow through. I find that highly unlikely because, as Trump said yesterday, he was asked about it by a CNN reporter. The CNN reporter said, "Do you think Iran's leaders take you seriously when you make these threats?" Trump looked at her, or him, I'm not sure it was a guy or a girl. You never know these days. The reporter was off camera, but Trump said, "I killed Soleimani. I destroyed their nuclear program. I destroyed ISIS and killed al-Baghdadi. Yeah, I think they take me seriously at this point." And I think they do too, and I take them seriously. So that is not the character of Donald Trump to say, we're going to take you out, we're going to do this and that in front of the eyes of the world and then not follow through. What does that mean? Fasten your seatbelts. Because I think the U.S., I don't know how the U.S. will do it, but here's a few options that have been discussed. Let's see. And I mean, they're going back, and it's mixed messaging, by the way, right now, folks, where the Trump administration will say, well, we want diplomacy, we want negotiations. And then you hear another report, they're going to strike in 96 hours, in 24 hours. They're not going to strike. This is exactly what we saw in the run-up to Operation Midnight Hammer back in June, when the U.S. dropped the hammer on Iran's nuclear program. So this is all part of a psyop, so to speak, and confusing the Ayatollahs. And look, remember, in the run-up to Operation Midnight Hammer and the 12-day war, when Israel struck, and that was coordinated with the U.S., you can't believe a word the mainstream media says. And I mentioned this the other day. Trump and Bibi have met 6 times in the past year alone, in the past, not even a year, since early February 2025. 6 times. And they're coordinating closely on things. And before every meeting, the mainstream media says, oh, they're on the outs, bad relationship, the relationship's in tatters. Wrong. We saw that most clearly in June, obviously. The Ayatollahs were so comfortable. They bought into the mainstream media lie that Trump and Bibi were having a falling out. Big mistake. So they were all sleeping, their military brass, apparently in their own beds that night when Israel eliminated all of them. So I think the Ayatollahs now are pretty certain that Trump means what he says, and there's a dose of unpredictability there too. How's he going to do it? Some of the options being discussed reportedly: massive airstrikes, assassinations of Khamenei and regime officials, no-fly zones over Iran, cyber weapons perhaps used. There's a lot of, as we saw in Venezuela last week and in Operation Midnight Hammer a few months ago, Trump has many very attractive, lethal options at his disposal when it comes to the U.S. military and its capabilities. So again, fasten your seatbelts. And I may be coming to you live. Who knows? I'm in Texas, so Iran is 9 hours ahead, and these strikes generally happen in the middle of the night, 3 a.m., 2 a.m., 4 a.m. So we shall see. But my final call to you is, number one, pray for wisdom and discernment and clarity for President Trump and the leaders in the U.S. They have this momentous decision before them that could shift the balance of history. I don't exaggerate in saying that. It could be a prophetic moment if this regime falls. And secondly, pray for the Iranian people. Pray for the Iranian people, for God to give them sustenance, protection against their evil overlords there in Iran. And we pray for justice for the Iranian people and the fall of this wicked regime. That's the best word to describe them, just wicked, just pure demonic evil. And they brought nothing but misery to their own people and the world for 47 years. Time's up. The moment of truth has arrived. Hey, thanks so much for joining us. Until next time, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.